The sun, a brutal orange disk, was barely above the horizon when the first bucket load of rebar and fractured concrete hit the back of the dumpster. It was 6:04 a.m. Ethan, the lead project manager for Apex Remediation, watched the operation with the exhausted focus of a man who hadn't slept in 36 hours and knew, with absolute certainty, that he was about to face a tidal wave of suburban rage. His crew, a silent, heavily geared team led by a foreman named Gus, who looked like he chewed granite for breakfast, had worked through the night. The court order, stamped with the uncompromising seal of the County Superior Court and the signature of a judge who had run out of patience, had demanded immediate and irreversible remediation of the structure known as the Azure Retreat, now where the opulent 70,000-gallon, travertine-edged monument to excess had sat just 12 hours ago. There was only a gaping, muddy crater. The exposed earth, churned by heavy machinery, looked like the grave of a giant, unloved beast. The only evidence that a pool had ever existed was the massive, shimmering pile of debris and a few scattered, iridescent blue mosaic tiles, the sapphire waves Karen had so proudly commissioned, now nothing more than broken, useless fragments. Ethan checked his watch, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. He was waiting for the inevitable. The papers had been served 3 weeks ago. The injunction was clear. The warnings from the Glenwood Estates Homeowners Association, HOA, had been ignored for 9 months. Karen had treated every official document as spam, every certified letter as a flimsy suggestion, believing her personal property rights trumped everything, including the established utility easement that ran a full 6 feet into her yard, and which her pool had been built directly over. "Gus!" Ethan called out, his voice already gravelly. "How much longer on that final fill? We need to cap this hole before she gets back from her spin class." Gus, a man of few words and profound cynicism, spat into the dirt. "She's not at spin class. Ethan, she's been parked down the street in that white Mercedes SUV since 5:30. She's just waiting for the perfect cinematic moment to make her entrance." Ethan frowned. He checked his side mirror. Sure enough, 3 houses down, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of a street lamp, the massive white vehicle sat idle. Karen wasn't going to storm the gates. She was staging a scene. He knew her type. The drama wasn't just a reaction. It was a strategy. She was building an audience, gathering her evidence, preparing to unleash pure, weaponized indignation. All right, just focus on the job. No engagement. If she approaches, remind her we are operating under Writ of Enforcement 447B, and she needs to contact her attorney. Mr. Jeremy Finch, do not, under any circumstances, touch her or step onto the primary structure of the house. As if on cue, the Mercedes engine roared to life. It didn't drive. It surged, tires squealing slightly on the freshly paved asphalt of the quiet cul-de-sac. It screeched to a halt right on the curb of Karen's immaculate property, and the driver's side door flew open with violence. Karen stepped out. She wasn't dressed for a confrontation. She was in pristine white yoga leggings, a logo-emblazoned fleece, and expensive oversized sunglasses that instantly communicated her status as a victim of cosmic injustice. She didn't need to speak. Her body language was a performance of pure, paralyzing horror. She took 3 steps onto the lawn, stopped dead, and slowly lifted her sunglasses. The morning light, which was supposed to illuminate her tranquil morning ritual now, revealed the staggering scale of the disaster. The silence lasted only 3 seconds before the first sound. Ripped from her throat, a guttural, wounded animal sound, quickly escalating into a piercing shriek. "What have you done?" she bellowed, her voice echoing off the neighboring stucco walls. Ethan sighed, took a deliberate breath, and walked towards the edge of the excavated perimeter, keeping a safe distance near a stack of plywood sheets marked with bright orange safety tape. "Good morning, Ms. Albright," Ethan said, keeping his voice level and professional, projecting calm into the chaos. "As per the court order issued on the 10th of last month, we commenced remediation activities at 11 p.m. last night." Karen didn't look at him. She was staring, transfixed, into the muddy abyss. Her hands flew up to her head, clutching her perfect blonde ponytail. "Remediation? Remediation?" You've demolished my property! This is vandalism. This is destruction of private property. Where is my pool? Where is the water? Where is the tile? I paid $65,000 for that custom filtration system. Her eyes, finally snapping toward Ethan, were wide and red-rimmed, either from lack of sleep or genuine shock. She was entirely skipping the denial stage and moving straight to aggressive accusation. Ms. Albright, please. You were notified repeatedly by the HOA, by the City Zoning Commission, and by my legal team, Ethan stated, holding up the clipboard that contained the stack of legal documents. The pool was constructed entirely over a main municipal power and water easement. It created a severe liability risk for both the city and your neighbors, particularly Mrs. Henderson. You were given 3 separate 30-day periods to hire a certified company to move or remove the structure. Move it? Karen's laugh was brittle and high-pitched. A pool is not a patio chair, you amateur. It's fixed property, and I never saw any warnings. My assistant handles the mail. All I saw were threats from that miserable old bat next door and her lawyer trying to sabotage my property value because she's jealous of my aesthetic. The judge disagreed with your assessment, Ethan countered, refusing to engage with the personal attacks on Mrs. Henderson, who had been genuinely terrorized by the risk of structural failure should the city ever need to access the pipes beneath the pool. The pool was built illegally. It compromised the easement. It had to be taken out. It is a necessary consequence of your non-compliance. Karen took a hesitant step toward the pit, her white leggings now splattered with mud churned up by the machinery. The sight of the shredded black pool liner lying in a heap seemed to be her breaking point. You don't understand. This wasn't just a pool. This was my business. I run a private, high-end aquatic therapy service here. I charge $200 an hour. You have just ruined my income. You have stolen my property. You are thieves! Ethan felt a surge of weariness mixed with frustration. We are not thieves, Ms. Albright. We are a court-mandated service. The documents are here. Your property was seized under judicial authority. We are not leaving until the excavation is filled, the land is graded, and the easement is restored. That was the moment the switch flipped. The indignation transformed into a cold, terrifying calculation. Karen stopped screaming, took a deep, shuddering breath, and reached into the pocket of her fleece for her phone. You think this is over? She whispered, her voice dangerously calm, the dramatic shift chilling Ethan. You think you can just come in here, commit a massive felony on my land, and then cite some dusty piece of paper? I don't deal with HOA puppets. I deal with law enforcement. She stepped back, turning her back partially to Ethan and ensuring her voice was loud enough for the neighbors and the man she was calling to hear every syllable. Ethan felt a cold prickle on the back of his neck. He knew this was her final desperate escalation, a calculated move to introduce a variable he couldn't control. 1. Yes, I am reporting a catastrophic property crime in progress. Karen's voice was high, tight, and laced with theatrical panic. Multiple men, armed with heavy machinery, have stolen a massive, expensive installation. They are currently trying to bury the evidence. They have vanished a 20-foot in-ground swimming pool. I want officers here right now! They are thieves. I saw them do it, and they're threatening me. Ethan stared, clipboard falling slightly in his grip. This wasn't a civil dispute anymore. This was a lie. A direct criminal accusation being broadcast to emergency services, labeling him and his crew as felons. She wasn't arguing about the law. She was manufacturing a crime. The distant siren, which had been faint before, suddenly sounded closer, more urgent, and unmistakably aimed in their direction. The powerful beat, turning point. Ethan realized the true consequence of dealing with a Karen. The loss of the pool wasn't enough. She had to ensure that the person who enforced the consequence paid an equal, if not greater, price. The siren shrieked, making its final approach, and Ethan heard Gus curse under his breath. They were minutes away from being detained, questioned, and potentially having their expensive equipment seized, all because Karen reported the court-ordered removal of her illegal pool as an act of grand larceny. Ethan dropped the clipboard, the papers scattering onto the mud, and watched the cruiser turn onto the street. The law was coming, but thanks to Karen, it was coming for him. The police cruiser, a sleek black and white vessel of authority, slid to a stop directly behind Karen's pristine white Mercedes. The siren died with a final electronic squelch, leaving an unnerving silence broken only by the low rumble of Gus's idling excavator and Karen's dramatic, ragged gasping. Two officers emerged. The first, a young, nervous-looking rookie, and the second, a seasoned woman, Sergeant Davis, whose face already bore the expression of profound exhaustion that comes from mediating disputes in affluent communities before 7 a.m. Davis immediately took in the scene, the gaping, fresh muddy hole, the massive pile of smashed concrete and rebar, the construction vehicles, and the woman in expensive athletic wear pointing a trembling finger at the muddy-booted project manager. Karen, seeing her audience had arrived, immediately intensified the performance. "Officer! Officer, thank God!" she cried, rushing toward Sergeant Davis with theatrical urgency. "These men, these criminals, they've committed a capital crime on my property. They've stolen my business, my livelihood. They've vanished my swimming pool, and now they're trying to bury the evidence in that pit." Sergeant Davis held up a calm hand, stopping Karen exactly 6 feet away. Her gaze swept over Ethan, who stood frozen, his eyes burning with the realization of the danger Karen's lie represented. "Ma'am, step back. I need you to calm down and tell me exactly what's happening here," Davis instructed, her voice deep and steady. She addressed Ethan next. "You, sir. Identify yourself and your purpose here." Ethan straightened his spine, trying to project the authority that the crumpled court order should have commanded. The mud covering the papers at his feet mocked his professionalism. "I am Ethan Miller, project manager for Apex Remediation. My crew and I are here under court order, writ of enforcement 447B, issued by Judge Harding of the County Superior Court. This is a civil, not a criminal matter," Ethan said, emphasizing the legal distinction. He gestured to the scattered documents. "The warrant for seizure and remediation is right there." Karen erupted again, her voice scaling up to a furious pitch. "He's lying. He has no permit. They showed up in the dead of night like burglars. They are armed with heavy machinery, and they've destroyed private property. Officer, I demand you arrest them immediately and impound that bulldozer. It's evidence." Sergeant Davis looked from the gaping hole, the indisputable evidence that a very large structure had been removed, to Ethan's tired, genuine eyes. She knew the drill. It was often easier to detain the perceived disruptors than to manage the hysterical civilian. "Sir, whether this is a civil issue or not, you are accused of felony vandalism and grand larceny," Davis stated flatly. "I need you to show me that paperwork now, or my rookie is going to cuff you for obstruction." Ethan bent carefully, retrieving the damp clipboard and the stack of thick, stapled documents. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sudden, sharp reality of the conflict. His word, backed by hundreds of pages of legal proceedings, against Karen's naked, calculated lie. Davis took the documents, flipped immediately to the final page, and her expression, which had been skeptical, shifted. Her lips compressed into a thin line. The stamp was unmistakable. The judge's seal was crisp. "Apex Remediation. Court-ordered removal of illegal encroachment on municipal easement," Davis read aloud, her voice carrying over the din of the construction site. She looked up sharply at Karen. "Ms. Albright, this document is signed and dated. This is a valid writ of enforcement. The removal was court-mandated." Karen staggered back a step, momentarily thrown off her script, but she recovered instantly, deploying a fresh layer of outrage. "That's a forgery. My lawyer, Mr. Jeremy Finch, explicitly told me there was a stay. He told me this was all settled," she cried, pointing a frantic finger at the official seal. "They must have fabricated it. Look at them! They look like common thugs. Officer, they destroyed my therapy pool. I have disabled clients who depend on that water." The lie about the stay was critical, implying Ethan was acting in bad faith. Ethan knew he couldn't let it stand. "Ms. Albright, your attorney, Mr. Finch, received the final order 2 weeks ago. He failed to file a motion to stay the enforcement deadline." "This is on your legal counsel, not on me," Ethan said, stepping closer to confront her lie directly. "And this was not a therapy pool. It was a recreational pool built too close to the property line, funded entirely by a home equity loan that the HOA discovered was fraudulent." "Enough," Sergeant Davis barked, stepping between them. She handed the documents to her rookie. Call this into the precinct, ask for verification on the writ number, and get the precinct legal liaison on the line, code 3, now." The young officer scurried off, phone pressed to his ear. Davis then turned her steely focus on Ethan. "Mr. Miller, while we confirm this documentation, I need you and your foreman to step away from the equipment and wait by my vehicle. We need to secure the scene." "But the fill," Ethan began. "You heard the sergeant, Ethan?" Gus grunted, killing the engine of the excavator. He hopped down, his eyes narrowed at Karen. "Let's go. Don't give the witch another reason to breathe fire." Ethan and Gus stood by the patrol car as the rookie spoke into his phone, relaying the details. The confirmation process took 7 agonizing minutes, minutes Karen used to full effect. She stalked the perimeter of the muddy hole, weeping loudly, pulling out her phone to film the atrocity, narrating a tragic story for an imaginary social media audience. She called out to neighbors who were starting to peek through blinds, including Mrs. Henderson, who was now watering her prize-winning petunias with a look of barely contained triumph. "Look what they did, Carol! They took it all! The thieves took my pool!" Karen wailed, turning the civil victory of the HOA into a narrative of personal persecution. Finally, the rookie returned, his face pale. He handed the clipboard back to Sergeant Davis. "Sarge, the writ is valid. Confirmed by the legal office. The deadline was yesterday at midnight. Apex Remediation is acting legally under court authority." Davis sighed, closing her eyes for a brief, weary moment. She looked at Ethan and Gus, whose faces were unreadable, then turned slowly toward Karen, who was mid-sentence in her dramatic video monologue. "Ms. Albright," Davis said, her voice now cold and authoritative, "the men are leaving. Their work is complete as mandated by the court." Karen stopped filming, her smile of vindication already forming. "See, I knew you'd help me. Now arrest them for the hours they've been on my property. I want them charged with trespassing and harassment." "No, ma'am," Davis stated, her eyes hard. "You are the one making the charge. You initiated an emergency response by calling 911, claiming multiple individuals were committing a felony, stealing a pool, and threatening you. Mr. Miller and his crew were here under a valid judicial order." Karen's face went from vindication to confusion. Well, yes, they were stealing it. "They took it away." "Stealing is the unlawful taking of property. The court ordered its removal," Davis corrected, her tone leaving no room for argument. "The problem, Ms. Albright, is that filing a false police report, especially through the 911 system, is a serious offense. You intentionally and maliciously reported a court-ordered civil action as a criminal emergency." Davis pulled a pair of handcuffs from her belt, the metallic click sounding deafening in the suddenly silent neighborhood. "Karen Albright, you are being placed under arrest for misuse of emergency services and filing a false police report." Karen's theatrical tears vanished, replaced by genuine shocked terror. "Arrest me? This is outrageous. I pay taxes. I am the victim here. You can't touch me. I know the mayor." The powerful beat turning point. Karma, justice. Sergeant Davis ignored her, securing the cuffs with practiced ease. As Karen was led, screaming hysterically, this time with real panic, past the open gate of her own property and towards the patrol car, she locked eyes with Ethan. His exhaustion was still there, but now it was mixed with a powerful, icy satisfaction. The pool was gone, but now so was Karen's composure and freedom. The consequence she sought to inflict on Ethan had rebounded, delivering instant public karma. The real dangerous fight was now just beginning, moving from the muddy easement to the cold, unforgiving precinct, where her desperate lie would become a matter of public record. The taillights of the patrol car, carrying a screaming, protesting Karen, vanished around the corner of the cul-de-sac. The silence that followed was thick and oppressive, saturated with the smell of wet earth and shattered ambition. Ethan stood by the edge of the pit, watching the stunned neighbors slowly retreat behind their closed doors and drawn curtains. The morning spectacle was over, but the fallout had just begun. "She's a piece of work," Gus grunted, pulling himself back into the excavator cab. He flipped the ignition, and the diesel engine roared back to life, a comforting, industrial sound. "All right, Miller. Let's cap this hole before the city finds us for a public hazard. They pay us to remediate, not to star in reality TV." Ethan nodded, feeling the adrenaline finally start to drain away, leaving a bone-deep fatigue. He picked up the discarded clipboard, brushing the mud off the judicial seals. The satisfaction of seeing Karen face immediate justice was quickly replaced by a cold dread. He knew people like her didn't just accept an arrest for filing a false report. They escalated the war to a nuclear level. They didn't seek resolution. They sought annihilation of their perceived enemy. For the next 2 hours, the crew worked with brutal efficiency. The massive crater was filled, compacted with layers of dirt and gravel, and then leveled until only a large, brown, temporary patch marred the green expanse of Karen's lawn. By 9:30 a.m., the job was complete, and the heavy machinery was being loaded onto the flatbed. Just as Ethan was signing off on the cleanup manifest, his phone, which had been buzzing with calls, finally caught his attention. He glanced at the screen. Jeremy Finch, attorney at law. Ethan hesitated. He should let the man stew, let him feel the pressure of his client being booked. But Finch was the key, the weak link in Karen's armored defense. Ethan answered. Finch. Ethan's voice was clipped, devoid of pleasantries. Miller. Ethan, what the hell is this? I just got an emergency call from the precinct. You had my client arrested for a civil enforcement action? Are you insane? Finch's voice was high-pitched, manic, and strained, clearly shouting from an office or a car. I didn't arrest your client. Finch. Sergeant Davis arrested your client for misuse of 911 services and filing a false police report, a felony accusation of grand larceny against me and my crew. While we were operating under a valid court order that you, by the way, failed to file a stay against, Ethan retorted, his own anger rising. I suggest you focus on arranging her bail before she starts complaining about the municipal coffee. Finch let out a ragged, theatrical sigh. Listen to me, Ethan, you are a contractor. You're disposable. Karen Albright is a major donor to 3 city council campaigns and knows every judge in the district. You think you scored a win? You just signed the death warrant for Apex remediation. That sounds like a threat, Finch. It's a promise. She's out in 3 hours. And the minute she is, I'm filing a preliminary injunction against Apex for gross negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and destruction of business property. I'm going to sue you personally and corporately for $10 million. 10, Ethan. Do you understand what that number does to your insurance premiums? To your bonding? Your entire business will be declared uninsurable by the end of the day. Every project you have lined up, gone. Every asset, frozen. Ethan's gut twisted. He knew Finch wasn't bluffing about the lawsuit. A major legal action, regardless of merit, was a financial death sentence for a mid-sized remediation company. It wasn't about winning. It was about crippling the opponent with process. You're leveraging the criminal charge to get the civil charges dropped, Ethan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous monotone. You want me to walk into the precinct and say I was mistaken about the false report? No. I want you to say nothing, Finch corrected smoothly. I want you to tell the precinct that you accept her statement as a misunderstanding during a highly stressful, court-ordered seizure. You tell them you won't press charges for the false report. She walks. No misdemeanor, no public record. And maybe I only sue you for the cost of the pool, a measly $650,000, which your insurance can handle. You keep your company. You keep your life. You keep your reputation. Ethan gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. And if I don't, then welcome to the largest, nastiest civil war this county has ever seen. Karen won't just go after your company. She'll go after your licenses, your home, your personal accounts. She told me you think her pool was built with fraudulent loan money. Let's see how secure your assets are when she throws a team of forensic accountants at you. You tried to ruin her oasis. She's going to turn your world into a desert. Think about it, Miller. You have 1 hour. Finch hung up without a farewell. Ethan stood alone on the now empty, desolate patch of earth, the threat hanging in the air like ozone before a storm. He looked at Gus, who was climbing out of the truck, oblivious to the call. Trouble? Gus asked, wiping grease on his jeans. Trouble just filed a $10 million lawsuit against us. Unless I retract my statement to the police about Karen's false report, Ethan admitted. The words tasting like ash. Gus stopped, his expression turning to grim realization. You can't do that, Ethan. You let her walk. She uses that win to claim harassment and come after us anyway. You give in to the terrorist. I know. But if she hits us with 10 million, we're done. Bond revoked, bank pulled, we're selling assets by Friday. Ethan paced, running a frantic hand through his hair. He needed legal help, and fast. The HOA lawyer, Mr. Davies, was too slow and only concerned with the easement. Ethan needed a pit bull. He dialed his business attorney, Michael Varick, a man known for his merciless approach to corporate litigation. Varick answered on the third ring. Ethan relayed the morning's events. The court-mandated removal. The 911 call, Karen's arrest, and Finch's immediate, catastrophic $10 million counter-threat. Varick listened in silence until Ethan was finished. When he spoke, his voice was chillingly calm. Ethan, listen carefully. Finch is right about one thing. A $10 million punitive suit will kill your business, regardless of the outcome. We cannot afford that risk. A cold sweat broke out on Ethan's forehead. So I take the deal? I tell the police it was a misunderstanding? No, Varick said, the words snapping like a whip. You never negotiate with a bully who has already committed perjury. If you drop the charge, you validate her victim narrative. We are going to hit her first. We are going to leverage her criminal complaint. But we're going to do it harder than Finch ever imagined. Varick's next words delivered the ultimate unforeseen turning point, escalating the conflict far beyond a simple property dispute. I want you to immediately file a countersuit against Karen Albright for malicious prosecution and slander, with damages in the amount of $20 million. And I want you to name Mr. Jeremy Finch as a co-conspirator. Finch's threat to ruin you is witness intimidation and coercion, and we have it recorded. This is no longer about the pool, Ethan. This is about destroying her capacity to ever threaten anyone again. We're going to bankrupt her, and we're going to get her lawyer disbarred. Ethan stared at the brown patch of earth where the pool used to be. A simple job was now a high-stakes, scorched earth legal battle. The consequence of his professionalism was total war. He had tried to follow the law. Now he had to use it as a weapon, the powerful beat turning point, escalation shock. Ethan ended the call, his hand still shaking, but a steely resolve replacing the fear. He looked at Gus, who was waiting patiently. Call the rest of the crew, Gus. Apex Remediation is closed for business until further notice. We just declared war. Ethan's office, once a chaotic but functional hub for blueprints, estimates, and remediation schedules, had been transformed into a stark, silent war room. Blue legal binders, each labeled with the severe title Albright versus Apex Remediation, or the even more ominous Apex Remediation versus Albright and Finch, replaced the tools and safety vests. Apex Remediation was paralyzed. Gus and the crew were being paid standby, their heavy machinery sitting idle in the yard, expensive anchors waiting for the legal storm to pass. Ethan's business lawyer, Michael Varick, lived up to his reputation. He was a creature of pure aggressive process, moving with a speed that left Ethan breathless. Within 48 hours of Karen's arrest, Varick had successfully filed the $20 million countersuit and, crucially, a motion demanding the immediate preservation and introduction of two key pieces of evidence: the official 911 dispatch recording and, most devastatingly, the recording Ethan had automatically captured of Jeremy Finch's attempt at legal coercion. They tried to use process to kill us. Ethan, Varick stated during one of their endless video calls, his face sharp and unrelenting on the screen. Now we use facts to incinerate them. Their case is built on emotional distress over a pool. Our case is built on malicious prosecution, slander, and the attempted obstruction of justice by an officer of the court. We have the high ground, but the high ground was exhausting. Ethan hadn't had a proper night's sleep since the excavation. The stress was a physical weight pressing down on his chest. Every call, every email, every knock on the door felt like a threat. He was losing contracts. Clients weren't waiting for the outcome of a $20 million legal battle. The financial hemorrhage was severe. Michael, we're 2 weeks into this, and I've had to mortgage the yard equipment just to keep Gus and the guys paid. How long until we get a preliminary ruling? Ethan asked, rubbing the tension from his temples. We're moving to the emergency injunction hearing on Finch's suit this afternoon. Judge Harding, the same one who issued the writ of enforcement. The first step is to gut their motion for punitive damages, Varick replied, tapping a pen against his teeth. The 911 tape is our scalpel. The Finch tape is our axe. The deposition of the accused. The courthouse conference room was small, sterile, and cold. The air conditioning hummed, adding a layer of artificial tension. Karen Albright sat across the long, polished table from Ethan, flanked by Jeremy Finch. Karen was no longer in leggings. She was dressed in a pristine power blue suit and pearls, attempting to project wounded dignity. Finch, however, looked distinctly ill, his usual slick composure replaced by a tight-jawed anxiety. He knew Varick was holding a card. Varick was masterful. He didn't rant. He simply presented evidence. He opened the hearing with a quiet, devastating request. Your Honor, we move to introduce into evidence the 911 call placed by the plaintiff, Ms. Albright, on the morning of the court-mandated remediation. Finch objected immediately, sputtering about privacy and prejudicial material. The judge, a woman with zero tolerance for melodrama, overruled him. The conference room speakers crackled, and Karen's voice filled the room, high-pitched, frantic, and theatrical. Audio clip plays. 911? Yes, I have a crew of construction thieves on my property. They vanished a 20-foot swimming pool. It's not just gone. They claim it was never there. The clip ended. The silence was deafening. Ethan watched Karen carefully. Her face was pale, but her chin remained defiant. Varick leaned forward, his voice low and conversational. Ms. Albright, you testified in your original complaint that Mr. Miller and his crew were committing grand larceny and threatening you. After hearing that recording, do you still stand by the assertion that the legally mandated removal of a structurally illegal fixture constitutes theft? Karen managed a tight, superior smile. It was theft of my assets, yes, and I was in distress. My pool was gone. Any reasonable person would panic. I felt threatened by large men with heavy equipment. I see, Varick said, his expression flat. He paused, allowing the silence to stretch. Then let's move to Exhibit D, the transcript of a phone call placed to my client. Mr. Miller, shortly after your release from custody. Ms. Albright. Mr. Finch, perhaps you can save us time and authenticate your voice for the court. Finch shot Karen a look of pure venom, a silent accusation for having pushed him too far. Finch knew exactly what was coming. Finch cleared his throat. I object, Your Honor. This is attorney-client privilege and is irrelevant to the initial suit. Objection overruled. The judge cut in sharply. The court has ruled on the motion to compel. Mr. Miller was a party to the call. Play the recording, Mr. Varick. The second audio clip began. It was Finch's desperate, strained voice, clearly laying out the threat. Audio clip plays. Listen to me, Ethan. You are a contractor. You're disposable. You think you scored a win? You just signed the death warrant for Apex remediation. I want you to tell the precinct that you accept her statement as a misunderstanding. I only sue you for the cost of the pool. If you don't, I'm going to sue you personally and corporately for $10 million. Karen won't just go after your company. She'll go after your licenses, your home. The recording ended. The room was utterly still. Karen looked genuinely bewildered, realizing for the first time the depth of the illegal pressure Finch had applied on her behalf. Varick rose slowly, towering over the table. He didn't look at Karen. His eyes were fixed entirely on Finch. Your Honor, this recording confirms not only the premeditation of Ms. Albright's legal actions, but also a clear attempt by the co-conspirator, Mr. Finch, to extort my client into retracting a criminal complaint, thereby obstructing justice and covering up a felony. Given this egregious display of professional misconduct, we not only move to dismiss Ms. Albright's initial suit with prejudice, but we also request an immediate contempt of court citation and a referral to the state bar for disbarment proceedings against Mr. Jeremy Finch. Finch's face crumpled. He knew Varick was right. The audio was damning. He had crossed the ethical line and was caught on tape. The powerful beat turning point, justice, karma. The judge sighed, removed her glasses, and fixed Finch with a look of icy disappointment. Mr. Finch, you are in clear violation of Rule 3.4 of professional conduct. Stand up. The court finds you in direct contempt. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Finch to the holding cell. And Ms. Albright, your motion for punitive damages is dismissed. Furthermore, this court is now officially consolidating all remaining claims under Apex Remediation versus Albright. and due to the egregious nature of the evidence, we are allowing the motion to seize all non-essential assets related to the fraudulent loan identified in the original HOA complaint. Karen stared in horror as the bailiff cuffed her lawyer. The legal battle had not only cost her the pool, but now her counsel and soon her luxury assets, proving the severe consequences of her initial hysterical lie.